November 4th, 2020 workshop meeting for Plymouth Township Council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item we have tonight is a presentation from the Environmental Advisory Board. We never get to hear from the Environmental Advisory Board.
We never hear.
Hi,
Chris,
this is
council.
This is first a smoking nuisance issue, and I guess we'll hand it over to our EAB members.
And may I present? Do I have sharing? Yes, I do. Is that showing up okay?
Yep.
Yes.
You got it.
Okay, great. Welcome, Council, Mr. Chairman, guests. The EAB is pleased to present a proposal to Council action to address the nuisance of secondhand smoke in multifamily dwellings such as townhomes, condos, and apartments. This proposal goes to the heart of the definition of nuisance as codified in Plymouth Township's public nuisance affecting health. No nuisance meets this definition better than that of secondhand tobacco smoke, which can kill people. I'll turn it over to my fellow EAB member, Agam Sess, who will walk us through the slides.
Thanks, Bill. It's a real pleasure to be presenting this on behalf of the EAB. Bill, if you could advance to the next slide, please. You're all aware of how toxic secondhand smoke is, not only to lungs, but to almost every other organ in the human body. What you may not have heard are the following three facts. Number one, there is no risk-free exposure to secondhand smoke. A brief, even a single exposure can have very harmful health effects, especially for vulnerable folks and folks with pre-existing conditions like kids, seniors, pregnant women, and those with underlying factors such as asthma, respiratory diseases, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. Number two, and sadly, more than 100 Americans still die from secondhand smoke exposure, and over 1 million non-smoking adults have died from such exposure since the US Surgeon General's first report on this topic. And finally, number three, a lot of the secondhand smoke exposure, unfortunately, occurs right where people live. That's in and around their own homes, making it a public health imperative to address it. Next slide, please, Bill. In terms of a public health imperative, this unfortunate pandemic reminds us that since the coronavirus attacks the respiratory system, it's critical to prevent exposure to anything that would weaken the lungs. The University of California has said that health risks may be heightened for people exposed to secondhand smoke and secondhand vaping also. In other words, the effects of tobacco are not just restricted to smokers. People breathing in secondhand smoke also are at greater risk, given that such exposure weakens the immune system and limits the body's natural defense against COVID-19. In addition to the individual's health risk, smoking, vaping, and exposure to secondhand smoke and aerosols can also potentially increase transmission risk associated with COVID-19. Removing face coverings to smoke or vape indoors undermines the proven benefit of face coverings and increases the risk of transmitting or inhaling COVID-19 via infectious respiratory droplets, uncovered coughs, and increased touching of faces. Just like the coronavirus, secondhand smoke spreads through a building, in casinos, bars, and hotel ventilation systems. And these ventilation systems do not eliminate exposure to the gases, toxins, carcinogens, and particulate matter contained in secondhand smoke, and e-cigarette aerosols. And so therefore, in these times, businesses are realizing that now is the perfect opportunity and time to go smoke-free. More than 125 casinos and dozens of gaming sites, including those in PA, that allowed smoking pre-COVID are now non-smoking. Airports are closing their smoking rooms to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And indeed, as businesses resume, they will need to do their best to make sure that high-risk people are protected from smoke-filled environments. Next slide, please, Bill. Now imagine just for a minute that you live in a townhome, condo, duplex, or apartment in Plymouth Township, where neighbors share a wall and they're so close that they can almost shake hands from their front porch or rear decks, many times within a 6 feet distance. And cigarette smoke from your neighbor envelopes your unit and adjacent units and penetrates into it through doors, windows, HVAC systems, garages, leaving you, an innocent resident, as a helpless victim trapped in your own home with nowhere to escape. And plus, once that secondhand smoke enters your unit, it's extremely difficult to clean it out from furniture, fixtures, and such, and it can trigger respiratory or other health problems for a child, senior, adults with pre-existing conditions that we talked about. In fact, cigarette smoke is so insidious that efforts now include preventing exposure not only from secondhand smoke, but even from third-hand smoke, which really is smoke that's stuck on items like fabrics and furniture, fixtures, cabinets, and such. So in this instance, what would you do if you and your family were so helplessly trapped? At the mercy of ineffective HOAs, you only have two options, both very unreasonable at the moment. Number one, sue your neighbor, or number two, sell your house and move out, even though moving to a different planned community within the township is no guarantee that you will not face this problem again, because it only takes one nuisance neighbor to precipitate this problem. The big gap, of course, is that the township already recognizes nuisances such as loud noise, and that if your neighbor was making loud noise, no matter what kind of dwelling you lived in, you could call the police to referee the situation. But not so for cigarette smoke, which kills and which affects multiple people, including adults and kids in these multi-family dwellings, and which perfectly meets the township's definition of nuisance, i.e. public nuisance affecting health. So this is a gap that needs to be addressed. Next slide, please, Bill. So after careful consideration and deliberation, we're proposing two options to the council for serious consideration. In the first one, we're proposing that the township implement a new ordinance prohibiting smoking in multi-family dwellings, such as townhomes, condos, and apartments. Such an ordinance would combine the already pre-existing township principles of enforcing nuisance restrictions on private property, which the township currently does in other instances, such as loud noise, and recognizing secondhand tobacco smoke as a nuisance, which also the township already recognizes as reflected by the total smoking ban in township parks and buildings. As of August 15th, 2020, so just as of a few months ago, to the best of my knowledge, 63 municipalities have enacted a law at the city or county level that prohibits smoking in 100% of private units of multi-unit housing properties. In the second option, we are proposing that the township expand its existing definition of nuisance, which is public nuisance affecting health, to include secondhand tobacco smoke surrounding and drifting into multi-family dwellings, such as townhomes, condos, and apartments. Since the township already deems secondhand smoke as a health hazard, and since multiple residents, including seniors and kids, would be affected by cigarette smoke from their neighbor or neighbors in and around their houses, this action by the township would provide a lifeline for victims of secondhand smoke in these multi-unit dwellings to abate this nuisance by placing a simple call to the township police, who could then intervene to remedy the situation. Next slide, please, Bill. In the next 3 slides, we've addressed potential questions that you might think of or that may come up. The first one, of course, understandably comes to the regulation of nuisances on private property. And the response to that is that there are already examples of nuisances on private property which the township currently regulates. For example, I talked about loud noise from a neighbor. You could have nudity and obscenity from a neighbor that you could call the police for. The second one is that Pennsylvania state law might preempt the township from enacting such an ordinance. To the best of our knowledge, state law preemption may not apply with respect to housing, such as multifamily dwellings, that are not expressly, or that may not be expressly mentioned in the state statute, potentially allowing municipalities to implement rules and regulations stricter than state law. And although certain individuals may try to claim that any measure related to smoking is preempted by state statute, that may not explicitly be true, because the preemption language may not apply to housing. The third one is, why don't we just punt to the HOA or the landlord? This is a case where you don't want residents to be at the mercy of HOAs unwilling or unable to abate this nuisance. And also, you don't want different HOAs within the township acting differently on an issue that makes universal, common, medical and legal sense. Next slide, please. There's always the justifiable fear that what if somebody litigates and sues, claiming the right to smoke? This is probably a very common misconception. There is no such thing, to the best of my knowledge, as a legal, constitutional, or fundamental right to smoke. Smoking does not seem to be a specially protected liberty or right under the Due Process Clause of the Constitution. And the fundamental right to privacy does not seem to apply to smoking. And so therefore, smoking has been restricted by law, regulation, and ordinance, and nicotine addiction is not a protected medical condition or disability. Smokers are not a protected class. So it's also important to remember that this proposed action is not against smokers. It's not against the act of smoking. It's against the nuisance of secondhand smoke. There is the point where, is there a precedence of such action in Pennsylvania? And to that, we say that this is the right thing to do. If not us, who? If not now, when? This is a public health imperative. It's important and it's urgent in these times that we live in, where due to the respiratory nature of the pandemic's coronavirus, the possibility exists for droplets containing the virus to be transmitted. And really, the public consciousness is now really moving towards protecting people from secondhand smoke. It's no longer a question of who will go next. It's really now who will go last in terms of getting smoke-free environments and protecting constituents and citizens from tobacco smoke. Next slide, please. There's the understandable question of, if there are restrictions, really, where would somebody who wants to smoke go? And here we re-emphasize that neither of these two options proposed means that individuals who smoke have to quit or they have to move or sell their home. They would do the same thing that they would do in numerous other private and public spaces, such as township parks and buildings, healthcare facilities, workplaces, malls, restaurants, bars, movie theaters. They would just go outside the property sufficiently far away from buildings and people to smoke so as to not expose residents and constituents to secondhand smoke in and around their own homes. So Bill, why don't I turn it over to you for any additional comments that you might have and then other EAB members might have.
Thank you, Agam. Appreciate you're going through all the detail. I'll just back up here while I say a few things. There are other disturbing statistics that secondhand smoke is a proven cause of serious diseases and premature death. For instance, children living in multifamily unit housing have 43% greater exposure to secondhand smoke than children living in detached homes. And infants who are exposed to secondhand smoke after birth are at greater risk for sudden infant death syndrome. It is for all these reasons that we've heard that people across the United States are speaking up for the right to breathe clean air, smoke-free air in and around their own homes. And it's why a growing number of municipalities, cities, and states are enacting laws that require private and public spaces to be smoke-free. For reference, there are several instances of smoking being prohibited in both public and private places, such as public buildings, parks, healthcare centers, hospitals, restaurants, etc., even bars. In addition to the health hazards of tobacco smoke, note that cigarette butts are one of the most littered items on the planet. They do not biodegrade and leach toxic materials such as arsenic, leading to land, water, and air pollution. And smoking is a known cause of building fires. Smoking is already banned in Plymouth Township buildings and parks. The AB proposal aims to address the gap for our constituents living in multifamily dwellings. The AB has worked hard over the last year to carefully draft this, and our sincere hope is that the council considers action on this. And I want to really thank Agam for doing the depth of research and background work on this to pull together such a compelling presentation. So thank you, Agam. Also wanted to ask if there are any other EAB members on the call that would like to add anything from their viewpoint. Otherwise, I'll open it up if there are any questions from council or staff.
I would just like to say, I'd like to also thank Agam for coming tonight and presenting this. I know that we had probably started talking about this, I guess maybe about a year ago. I think you reached out to me and with some of these concerns. I think there's a lot in here, and I don't want to put Mr. Clark, our solicitor, on the spot. So I think what I would like is to sort of hand it off to him and have him take it back to his staff and look through this a little bit and see where there might be some legal questions, or see what expert knowledge they have, and then have him come back to us after they've had some time to look at it apart. I think there's a few issues in here that there probably might be some questions about, but certainly that they can look at. And rather than put him on the spot now, just give them a chance to maybe go back, particularly in looking at some of those concerns, some of those questions you raised on the last couple of slides, and see where the legal opinions might fall on some of these.
That
Thank
sounds
you.
good. Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks,
Chris.
guys.
Does anybody else on council have any questions at this point?
Yes.
Go ahead.
This is Marty Higgins. First, let me say I'm very impressed with the presentation, and we met, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think, at the Township Building, Mr. Ogman. In your presentation, you say an ineffective homeowners association. Does that mean that you've attempted to get some kind of relief through the homeowners association already?
Correct, which hasn't played out at all.
Okay. So you've gone to them and made this similar request and they turned it down?
Yeah, in my specific case, exactly, Mr. Higgins, that we did it by the book, approached it step by step, and it's exactly what was stated in one of the slides, where if they're ineffective or unwilling or unable to do it, then residents may end up in a situation where they get zero abatement on a very compelling and harmful nuisance.
I guess it's not a question, but one of the practical problems I see is enforcement. So theoretically, someone lights up a cigarette in any multi-family dwelling in the township and their neighbors call the police. how many times a day or night are our police going to be responding to this type of situation? I guess that's a practical concern that I have.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, Mr. Higgins. The hope and expectation is that with the recognition of the nuisance and with the intervention by the police, once the neighbor, the person who smokes, realizes that there is a nuisance in effect or at play, then they would just go sufficiently far away so as to not repeat the action.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Any other, Ogden, would you mind ending your screen share for me? There
I
you
think
go.
that's good. Okay, thanks.
Sorry. It's hard to like to see faces, see if anybody has any questions.
Yes.
Does anybody else on council have any questions at this point, or would you rather just, like I said, sort of let Mr. Clark kind of go and take a look and see what feedback they can bring to us next time?
Well, I just have a comment. I wanted to thank Agam. I know how hard you and the EAB worked on this for a long, long time, and we've met quite a few times about it. And you finally settled on the approach of it being a nuisance. And I can understand what Mr. Higgins says about the police having to come out, but I know from other residents who have faced situations with their neighbors, whether it's harassment or things of that matter, that sometimes a few visits, even maybe one visit from the police, is enough to make a recalcitrant neighbor stop his or her behavior. And but I'll leave that to the chief to address more as this process goes forward. But I think loud noises are upsetting for children who've gone to bed, and with the fireworks and all, or loud music. But this is actually a health nuisance, not just I can't sleep with your loud noise nuisance, or I'm offended by what you say to me every time I leave my apartment door and go on the elevator. So I think the health aspect of this nuisance adds a little more urgency to Mr. Shest's concerns and those of the EAB. I know it can be difficult when someone is blowing smoke in where your children are playing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramley. Really appreciate that.
Anything else at this time? All right, so we'll have Mr. Clark and his firm take a look and see if what kind of questions we might have to come back from that, and then see what actions or what steps we can take next.
Thank you for your attention and questions, and we appreciate the chance to present.
Thank you. All right, moving down, I'll do the budget meeting, and I'll do administration A and B. And I guess that brings us to administration C, sewer rate increase. Tim.
This is just an informational item. Our next budget workshop will be November 16th. We'll be going over the sewer fund. I just want to give you a heads up. At that meeting, I'll be proposing an increase in the sewer rates of somewhere between 5 and 6%. This will be our first increase in about 2 years. We have 3 projects, capital projects going right now or planned, which add up to about $2 million. So I think the time is right for a small increase in the sewer rate. And we'll be proposing that at the November workshop, and I believe we'll have a draft ordinance. And if council is okay with that, I would believe it would be voted on at the December workshop. So we'd have time to get the bills in the mail for the fourth quarter with the new rates. And even so, after this increase, we've got some of the lowest sewer rates in all of Montgomery County. Our rates are still very low, even with this increase. So again, this is just for your information. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
Chris, there will be a fourth item added to next Monday night's agenda under administration. It's a tax assessment appeal for Wells Fargo, and I think Mike would be taking that. Mike, did Alex mention that one to you?
He did.
Yeah.
And I have the information on it if anyone needs anything about it tonight. So,
Otherwise, you'll have it over the weekend. I have it, so you'll get it in your
okay.
smaller packet. And just want to let you know about that addition. I have a couple additions, actually. Okay. Ready for police and public safety. Thank you.
Chief, promotion of sergeant.
Yes, thank you. The Civil Service Commission adopted the eligibility list for the position of sergeant on October 15th. The first candidate, Officer Rocco Wack, would be filling the position left by Sergeant Tom Longo. So I asked council if we could promote Officer Wack at the November meeting.
Any questions from council?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Do you want the chief to take that, or one of you?
I would prefer the chief took it if he wants it.
No, that's great. Thank you. I'll say a few words on his behalf.
Item B is the retirement resolution for Tom Longo. I'd like to take that unless somebody else wants it. All right,
Yours?
I'm taking.
Okay.
Can't dispute the chair.
I'll let somebody else handle C. Chief, next.
If I could, just for Tom Longo, would you mind if I say a few words?
Yeah, you want to say them before I read the resolution or after I read the resolution?
It's up to you. Before, if that's fine.
Yeah, probably before, because then you're going to have to vote on the resolution. And then
Okay.
everybody claps, so.
Yep.
You know.
Got it.
And I don't know if this is typical, but I'm going to ask on his behalf. Tom Longo asked if he could say a few words. I don't know if that's permissible or not.
Should be fine.
Okay.
Okay, then.
Comment on any motion, it's fine. Good. John, will he be in your conference room then?
We will do it from our conference room, right?
Okay.
And then I think you'd already mentioned to go on to to letter C, which would be the marijuana ordinance. I believe, Karen, do they have a copy of the one that
Yes.
I proposed? We looked at quite a few that the solicitor's office put together for us. And the one that we thought most closely matches what we're trying to do for our community was from Phoenixville, the borough of Phoenixville. So I'd like the opportunity to go through that with the solicitor's office, because there are some minor changes we thought would be more appropriate for our community than what Phoenixville had. But we think we can put a nice comprehensive ordinance together, and it just gives the officers an alternative to having to criminally charge someone. Sometimes they're young, it's a small amount. The state and even the nation is going toward, this isn't really decriminalizing it, but it's giving us a step in that direction. I just thought it's I think overdue actually for a lot of areas. And I think people around us, Norristown has been doing it for about a year or two. And I think White Marsh might still be in the process of looking into this. It's really for a small amount, which is, it's not for larger amounts. It's not meant for people that are, trying to distribute it and so forth. It's like I said, it just gives us another alternative. What we've been trying to do since I became chief was we cite people instead of arrest them, but we do it under disorderly conduct, which district court has been continuously throwing out, and rightfully so, because it doesn't really apply, but it was the closest we had. So for us to do this, we really need to have a township ordinance.
Any questions at this point from council?
I have two questions, one for the chief and one for Mr. Clark. Chief, do you happen to know, I know Phoenixville references, especially when you're dealing with youth and the effects that marijuana can have on a developing brain. Do we have any local agencies around here where the parent and child can be given the names of agencies that might be able to help the kid hold off on marijuana use?
There are some that at the county level that we could access. I've got to be honest, I don't even know many parents that have asked to look into that. I mean,
Okay.
in our experience, it hasn't been a concern of the underage kids or the parents to go that route. But we do have, and we do always offer that information to people.
Yeah, you know, the poster that was out on the front lawn, Talk First? Yeah, it was a county organization for opening
Okay.
up dialogue with parents and children. And
That's good.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering, and maybe Mr. Clark has an answer for this one. If it gets reduced to a citation as a summary kind of offense, will that be the kind of thing that someone needs to put on their employment application about, have you ever been convicted of a crime? They say, we don't care about parking and traffic violations. We're looking for crimes. Will
So
this
part of
affect-
it would depend upon the specificity of the question that's being asked. And I think one of the reasons that many municipalities want to make this a citation is because normally you're being asked about felonies and misdemeanors on job applications or other kinds of applications. And that's why making it a citation, they would not have to indicate that they've been that they've have a conviction for these offenses, because this is littering, this is other citation type offenses, so they don't normally get reported on job applications, and they don't normally show up in a criminal record search because they don't get reported to the state.
Okay. Oh, and also, for, trying to get into college or medical school, law school, that kind of thing. You don't want to derail someone's career. So,
No, understood. Yeah, and that's why it's in some ways it's not going to show up as much as if it's a misdemeanor or a felony.
great. Thanks.
Any other questions at this point?
Just a comment. I agree with the chief. It's long overdue.
Anybody else? So Chief, you wanted to take some time, I guess you said, to review it with Mike's office?
Yes, if there's only minor changes, like I said, to make it fit our community better, the needs of our residents.
Sure. All right. Anything else on police and public safety?
No, thank you.
Public Works?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Engineering, Mr. Manai?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Subdivision land development, what's the first one? Jolly Road?
Yes. Marty?
That's me. Yep. I got that.
Proving Grounds, it's Dave?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's going down to 5-1. Lil Vin, is that Marty?
That's
It's
Dave.
me.
Dave. Next one is Dave also.
Mm-hmm.
And North Lane is Kathy.
Yeah, we don't have that yet, but if we have it, you see the date's not filled in. They need to give us a letter. Dave's been trying very hard to get it, but yes, otherwise it is Kathy.
So it'll be in the next packet then, if it comes
If we,
through.
yes, if we get it, yes, and it'll be listed on the agenda too, yes.
Wood Spring Suites.
That's me.
And we have another escrow release that's at 135 Pleasant Road, the top of the valley there for Piazza Telly. I guess, is that you, Chris?
Yeah, Karen Bramlett, do you want that one?
Sure, thanks. I'll take that.
Code enforcement.
I only have one thing. I was approached by the chief of Harmonville Fire Company. They are going to be putting in a bunk room and they would be required to have a building permit. They estimated roughly $3,000. They have a contractor that's going to donate his time to do the work. And Keystone will waive their fees required, and they're asking council to do the same.
Is that's all stuff we can waive, I guess, normally?
We've been doing it for the fire company, ambulance company, and anybody that, for the township.
I'm okay with it. Fine.
Yeah,
Hey,
Okay.
okay.
So do you want me to, I would leave that on for next week.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so. Is there somebody want that one?
I'll take it.
You got it. All right. Zoning. I guess there's one here that we know that we already talked about, right?
Yeah, one that you've already, asked the solicitor to oppose.
Mhm.
And I think the others are fine. Let me just say one thing. There's this one, actually, yeah, the one for Kathleen Ramsey is, she lives there on Isabella Street. Her backyard, her side yard kind of backs up to Battaglia Auto Sales. I had a call from Ron Battaglia because right now she has kind of leased, I guess, her whole side yard to like a tree trimming business that it has tons of wood just dumped onto the property. And Ron called because he was worried that if that ever catches on fire, he said, his building will catch on fire. So that's what alerted us to the fact of what she was doing. And then Dave sent her a citation, cease and desist or make your application to the zoning board. It is a commercially zoned piece of property, but it is a residential street. And there's already one use on it, which is her home. And even so, like stockpiling lumber is not a permitted use in commercial, as it wouldn't be in residential either. So I don't know if you want the zoning board to handle that one, or if you want to send, Mike's office to oppose that one, or if you think it's okay or you don't. But
How long has she been operating this for?
I am not sure, Chris. Ron called, so I would imagine it hasn't been too long, or he would have called sooner.
Yeah.
It's off the beaten path, so it's kind of.
Right. I'll have to take a look at it. I would rather, at this point, not knowing a ton about it, I'd rather just let zoning handle it.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it to your attention. It's the only other one that has any, reason.
Karen, I think it's been less than 6 months.
Do you? Okay. Like I said, it's off the beaten path, so, people probably didn't even realize it was happening until the pile got so big. And then Ron called to complain about it.
Do you need a permit to operate a lumber yard, as she's calling it, on a residential property within a commercial district?
Well, it's not a permitted use, Karen. So that, I guess that's the first part. And the second part is, I guess, I mean, if it were a permitted use, then the company, I think at the end of the day, after they trim all the trees, they put all the spoils there. I'm not sure what, what they do with them from that, or if they're making firewood or what they're doing with it. But if the business is based in Plymouth Township, they should have a business license if they're based in Plymouth, but they're using that as a storage yard.
And Karen, it's pretty significant.
Paying for it, right? They're renting that.
They're leasing. Yeah, she probably has, in a business sense, she's leasing land. I would imagine she's leasing it. I don't know if they're cutting her grass or doing other favors for her in exchange. We had that happen once, where people offer to take care of your property in other ways if you let me put all my junk down here. That happened to Rita DeAngelis's property, many years ago. She got something in exchange for it, so she let it happen, but it wasn't permitted either.
Has monetary value, so even if you're bartering, it's a commercial exchange.
Mhm. So Chris had a comment.
Yeah, Karen, I was out there with Dave, and it's pretty significant, and I think Ron has legitimate concern. If you drive on Gallagher Road and you see H&R's log pile or somebody else's log pile there, it's pretty significant, and it's pretty close to his building.
But it's up to you. I just bring it to your attention. That's, I think, the only one that should have any concern about.
And Mr. Battaglia has been informed of the hearing and will have the ability to attend
He
and
will.
comment and
Yes.
defend.
Yeah, if the notices haven't gone out, but yes, they probably have, because it's November 16th, so. Mhm.
Yeah, I would just, I guess personally, I would almost just prefer to let zoning handle it, since especially because we have a big one that we're already sending opposition to, and I don't want to sort of take attention away from that. And,
Mhm.
I'm sure they can figure it out. Maybe maybe they can work something out in between. But
Okay, that's fine. There will be a second thing on your agenda under zoning next week, and that's a resolution to confirm all the existing members of the zoning hearing board. Apparently, there's a section 903 of the MPC that says that the zoning hearing board members shall be appointed by resolution. So again, with this pre-application, we want to make sure all the ducks are in order and we don't have anything missing.
sure. Good
So
idea.
Somebody
Good
will
thought.
need to take that.
Do the resolution.
Dave?
That's fine. Yeah.
So Dave for the resolution, and who wants to read the zoning list?
I can read it.
Okay. All right. Good with zoning?
That's it, yes.
All right. Parks and Rec, bricks and pavers announcement.
I'll do that.
I'll take B. Planning and development, nothing there, I assume. Anything else under planning there for number 9?
No, sir.
All right. And citizen board vacancy announcement.
I can do that.
Anything else on this agenda before we move over?
No, except for I realized I didn't send you the conference call.
Is it the same as last month's?
Yes, well, I was gonna say, I can send it to you all again, unless, and the only thing has to do with the citizen boards. I don't know if anybody has any other names they want to talk about on the executive session. Otherwise, it's really just a reminder that we're gonna need to know if you want to reappoint all the people on the list that are up for reappointments.
Oh, yeah, I sort of forgot. I mean, we have until the end of the year for that technically, right?
Yeah, but next month's the end of the year.
That's right. Right.
Hate to say it, but But yeah, but you really have just probably, the board vacancies are the two that you're going to announce anyway next week. And then you have just only just one member for the HAR board, it looks like to me. So if nobody, unless Mike has anything else for executive session, we probably, no?
No.
We probably don't even need the executive session, unless you have names that you want to talk about. Probably not yet, but
I don't yet.
it's mostly reappointments, and maybe one HARB person.
You should add, yeah, he's never shown up,
He's never
ever.
shown up.
I
So,
think one meeting, like in the very first, and I never met him.
yeah, Dave never met him. So that would be one HARB vacancy and two on the Property Maintenance Code Appeals Board.
Yeah.
If you want to reappoint everybody else that's eligible for a second term. So, but yes, we can talk about that in December, because it's usually at the reorganization meeting where you would make that final decision.
Right. Got it.
All right, so there's no executive session needed. And Len and Lonnie might get to the planning agency meeting.
We've got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you, Chris, well, we don't usually have audience participation unless council has anything else.
I don't have anything else unless anybody else. Although I will say really quick, just for the chief, as we talk about a lot of these, issues in policing now and stuff, and I just want to say that I had a minor incident at a polling place yesterday, and your officers came out and handled it with absolute grace and diffused somebody that was known to them. And I thought they just handled it outstanding. And I know that Joe Epwright was the first one there, and it just, again, it was a situation that in a tense time that, I thought they just diffused very easily, and it was good to see that. So thank you to them.
Thank you.
All right. Nothing else for me. If anybody else has anything.
I'm good.
All right. I guess
Okay.
we're adjourned. Thank you.
Great.
Good night, all.
Thank you.